I never expected to spend my 68th birthday sleeping in an abandoned garage, surrounded by the scent of motor oil and decades of dust. Yet here I was, fumbling with an unfamiliar key in the dark, tears blurring my vision as my son's words echoed in my mind. "You're just a useless old woman, Mom. What would you even do with a real inheritance?" Dad knew that. My hand trembled as I finally managed to slide the key into the rusted lock. The ancient door groaned in protest as I pushed it open, the beam of my flashlight cutting through decades of darkness. And that's when I saw it. I froze in place, my breath catching as the light revealed what lay inside. This couldn't be possible. This couldn't be what Robert had meant when he left me. Just a garage in his will. But let me back up. You need to understand how I ended up here, homeless on my birthday, clutching a suitcase containing what remained of my 42-year marriage. The day had started with me standing beside my son in our attorney's office. Jonathan in his perfectly tailored suit, me in the black dress I'd worn to Robert's funeral 3 weeks earlier. Mr. Hoffman, our family attorney for decades, had seemed unusually uncomfortable as he prepared to read Robert's will. "Before I begin," he'd said, adjusting his glasses, "I want to assure you that everything is legally binding and precisely as Mr. Campbell instructed." Looking back, I should have recognized that statement as the warning it was. The reading itself passed in a blur, but certain phrases stood out with devastating clarity. "To my son, Jonathan Campbell, I leave our penthouse residence in Los Angeles and my primary investment portfolio." And then, almost as an afterthought, "To my beloved wife, Susan Campbell, I leave the property located at 1420 Industrial Parkway." The garage and its contents. A garage. After 42 years of marriage, my husband had left me a garage. Jonathan's face had transformed from solemn grief to barely suppressed triumph in an instant. I remember his hand on my shoulder, squeezing slightly too hard as he'd lean down to whisper, "Don't worry, Mom. I'll make sure you're taken care of." I'd been too stunned to respond, too confused to question, why would Robert do this? Where was I supposed to live? What was I supposed to do? The answers came brutally clear that evening when Jonathan drove me back to what I still thought of as my home, the penthouse overlooking the city that Robert and I had shared for the last 15 years of our marriage. I'd barely stepped through the door when Jonathan set my suitcase down in the entryway. "I think it would be best if you found somewhere else to stay, Mom." I'd stared at him, not comprehending. "What do you mean? The penthouse is mine now. It's in the will." His voice had that rehearsed quality he'd perfected in business dealings. "I'm having some colleagues over tomorrow to discuss turning Dad's study into a home office, and I need to start making changes." "But where am I supposed to go?" The question came out small, bewildered. Jonathan had shrugged, the gesture dismissive in its casualness. "You could stay with Aunt Helen for a while. Or there's always that garage Dad left you." His laugh had a cruel edge I'd never heard before, though. "Why he left you that dump is beyond me. What are you going to do with it? Open a mechanic shop at your age?" I'd felt something shift inside me then, some foundation crumbling. "Jonathan, this is my home. Your father and it's not your home anymore." He'd cut me off, his voice hardening. "It's mine." Dad made that perfectly clear. I'd reached for the back of a chair to steady myself. "I need time to find somewhere to go. Surely you don't expect me to leave tonight." That's when he'd said it, the words that would echo in my mind for hours afterward as I drove aimlessly around the city, eventually finding myself on an unfamiliar street in the industrial district, staring at a dilapidated garage with a padlock on its door. "You're just a useless old woman, Mom. What would you even do with a real inheritance?" Dad knew that. The cruelty had been so unexpected, so at odds with the son I thought I'd raised that I couldn't even respond. I'd simply taken my suitcase, my purse, and the key Mr. Hoffman had given me after the reading, and walked out. So, here I was, standing in the open doorway of a forgotten garage, my flashlight beam revealing something so unexpected that I couldn't process what I was seeing, because that interior wasn't filled with junk or abandoned tools as I'd expected. The space before me contained 3 vehicles, each covered with custom-fitted cloth covers, arranged with meticulous precision. But it was the gleaming object partially visible at the front of the garage that had stopped my heart momentarily. The unmistakable silver grille of what appeared to be a vintage Aston Martin. its polished surface catching the light of my flashlight like a beacon in the darkness. What was this? And why on earth had Robert kept it secret from me all these years? I stepped forward, drawn by confusion and curiosity, unaware that I was about to discover just how thoroughly I had misunderstood my husband's final gift. My fingers trembled as I pulled the fitted cover from the Aston Martin, the soft material sliding away to reveal a 1964 DB5 in pristine silver birch, identical to the one Sean Connery drove in those James Bond films Robert loved so much. The car gleamed under my flashlight beam as if it had just rolled off the factory floor, not as if it had been sitting in this obscure garage for God knows how long. "Robert," I whispered into the stillness. "What on earth were you doing?" My husband had never mentioned collecting cars. In 42 years of marriage, there had never been a hint of this passion, investment, secret life. I didn't even know what to call it. I moved to the next vehicle, my heart beating faster as I gently pulled away its cover. A 1956 Mercedes-Benz 300 SL Gullwing emerged, its distinctive doors and elegant lines unmistakable even to my untrained eye. The deep blue paintwork was immaculate, the chrome details catching my flashlight's beam like scattered stars. The third cover concealed a Ferrari, a 1967275 GTB4. According to the small plaque mounted on a stand beside it, its deep red color reminded me of the wine Robert would order on our anniversaries. Rich and intense, each car was accompanied by a leather portfolio containing what appeared to be documentation, provenance papers, maintenance records, purchase agreements. I was no expert, but even I knew these weren't just nice old cars. These were museum-quality treasures worth I couldn't even guess. "There's gotta be an explanation," I murmured, my voice strangely loud in the silent garage. That's when I noticed the envelope taped to the wall beside a light switch. It had my name written on it in Robert's unmistakable handwriting. With fingers that wouldn't quite stop shaking, I pulled it down and found the light switch flooding the garage with unexpected brightness from modern LED fixtures recessed into the ceiling. The sudden illumination revealed that this was no ordinary garage. The space had been professionally finished with climate control systems, custom flooring, security features, and specialized storage areas along the walls. This wasn't some abandoned building. It was a carefully designed automotive sanctuary. I sank onto a leather bench positioned against one wall, the envelope heavy in my hands. After a moment's hesitation, I broke the seal and pulled out several pages of Robert's distinctive stationery. "My dearest Susan, if you're reading this, then I'm gone, and you've discovered what I've come to think of as my final gift to you. First, I need to say I'm sorry for the shock and confusion you must be feeling right now. The secrecy wasn't meant to hurt you, but to protect what I was building for your future. 6 years ago, when I received my diagnosis, the doctors gave me 5 years at best. I beat their timeline by a year, but I knew our time together was limited, and I needed to ensure you would be taken care of after I was gone." I paused, blinking back tears. Robert's diagnosis of progressive heart failure had been devastating, but he'd always downplayed its severity, insisting he had plenty of time. I'd had no idea he'd been planning for the end from the very beginning. "I know you're wondering about the will, about why I would leave our home to Jonathan instead of to you. Believe me, this decision caused me more sleepless nights than my health ever did. But over the past decade, I've watched our son change. The ambitious boy we raised has become something different, something harder and more calculating than I ever wanted him to be. The truth is, I feared what would happen to you if I left everything to both of you jointly, or even if I split things equally. Jonathan would have found ways to control the assets, to manage your portion for your benefit, as he would say. I've seen how he speaks to you when he thinks I'm not listening, how he dismisses your opinions and needs." A tear splashed onto the paper, blurring the ink slightly. I hadn't realized Robert had noticed those interactions. I'd always made excuses for Jonathan's dismissive behavior, telling myself he was just busy, just stressed with his career. So, I created this split inheritance with very deliberate intentions. Jonathan has received what he will see as the valuable portion, the penthouse, the visible investments, the status symbols. But what you're looking at now, my love, is the real wealth. These 3 cars alone are worth approximately $12 million. The documentation will confirm their provenance, and you'll find contact information for Marcus Weatherby, my trusted dealer and advisor for these acquisitions. He can help you with whatever you decide to do with them. $12 million. I looked up at the 3 silent machines, their gleaming surfaces reflecting the overhead lights. That couldn't possibly be right, but the cars are just the beginning. In the safe behind the photograph of us in Venice, combination is our anniversary. You'll find documentation for several investment properties I've acquired over the past 6 years, all placed in a living trust that transferred to your name upon my death. You'll also find banking information for accounts that should provide you with comfortable income for the rest of your life. My hands shook so badly I had to set the letter down for a moment. There was a safe. I looked around and spotted the framed photo on the wall. Robert and me on the Rialto Bridge, laughing as a street musician serenaded us during our 35th anniversary trip. I rose unsteadily and moved toward it. The safe opened with a soft click when I entered our anniversary date. Inside, I found a thick portfolio and several USB drives neatly labeled. The top document in the portfolio was titled Estate of Robert Campbell, Complete Asset Inventory for Susan Campbell. I flipped it open and immediately had to sit down again as columns of numbers and property descriptions swam before my eyes. Apartment buildings in Seattle, commercial property in Chicago, a small vineyard in Northern California, stock portfolios, bonds, private equity investments. The total value at the bottom of the page made my ears ring. With numbed fingers, I returned to Robert's letter. I know this is overwhelming, and I'm sorry for keeping all of this from you. At first, it was just a project to channel my anxiety.